Let me tell you something about first contact. It's never like the movies. No peaceful handshakes, no universal translators, no cute little aliens wanting to phone home. Nope. Our first real galactic introduction was basically the cosmic equivalent of a flaming bag of dog excrement left on humanity's doorstep. The Krel'vax arrived without warning. 3 massive biomechanical warships emerging from quantum slip space right into the outer perimeter of the new Beijing Colony. No messages, no warnings. Just pure, unadulterated destruction. 12 million people. Gone in 17 minutes. The colony's defense grid barely had time to light up before concentrated plasma volleys turned sophisticated infrastructure into radioactive confetti. Entire habitat rings vaporized. Atmospheric processors exploded. Agricultural domes became mushroom clouds of superheated ceramic and flash-frozen hydroponic crops. And the truly hilarious part: they didn't even bother to communicate. Tactical recordings would later show the Krel'vax ships methodically destroying every single human installation with surgical precision. No survivors, no prisoners, just systematic erasure. Admiral Helena Rodriguez, watching the live feed from United Earth Defense Command, didn't even have time to issue a full counterattack order before half the colony's population had been reduced to ionized particles. Her hands gripped the holographic display so tightly her knuckles turned white, each lost life etching another line of fury into her already weathered face. "Who the hell are these bastards?" she muttered, though no one in the command center was prepared to answer. The Krel'vax, we'd learn their name later from fragmentary communications and AI data reconstruction, were not interested in negotiation. They were hunters, predators. And humanity was just another target in their galactic culling process. What they didn't understand was a fundamental truth about human beings: we don't go quietly. We don't break, and we sure as hell don't forget. When you kill 12 million of us, you don't just destroy a colony. You light a fire that will burn across entire star systems. You wake the dragons. And dragons, my friends, are not known for their mercy. The initial strike was just the beginning. The Krel'vax thought they were conducting a clean, efficient extermination. They had no idea they were about to start a war that would redefine the meaning of total commitment. Humanity was going to teach them a lesson they would never forget, if they survived long enough to learn anything at all. Jack Reiker was not a morning person. Hell, he wasn't much of a person at all before his 3rd cup of coffee and a solid hour of complete silence, which made the blaring emergency alert currently destroying his peaceful morning routine particularly offensive. His small apartment on Europa Station, a glorified mining colony masquerading as a human settlement, seemed to vibrate with the intensity of the incoming transmission. Holographic displays flickered to life, casting an angry red glow across his minimalist living space. "You have got to be kidding me," Jack mumbled, spilling coffee on his last clean shirt. The emergency broadcast was crystal clear. New Beijing Colony. Completely obliterated. 12 million lives. Vanished. Most people would feel shock. Horror. Grief. Jack felt something else entirely. A cold, calculating anger that had been brewing since his forced retirement from the United Earth Strategic Defense Course 3 years ago. He'd been a tactical analyst. Not just any analyst, but the kind that military brass both respected and feared. Jack had a reputation for seeing battlefield scenarios 5 moves ahead, while most commanders were still figuring out their first move. His predictive models were legendary and ultimately his downfall. 3 years ago, he'd presented a comprehensive report predicting exactly this type of scenario: massive alien incursion, systematic colony destruction, overwhelming technological superiority. The military leadership had laughed him out of the room, called his models paranoid speculation, suggested he needed psychological evaluation, but they'd stripped him of his commission, buried his research, retired him with a pittance of a pension and a not-so-subtle suggestion to keep his mouth shut. Now, watching the emergency broadcast of 12 million humans turn to ash, Jack's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Told you so," he whispered to no one in particular. His communication implant chirped. An encrypted channel. Rare these days when most communication networks were either monitored or compromised. "Reiker," a familiar voice said. Admiral Helena Rodriguez. The same woman who'd been in command during the new Beijing massacre. "Hello, Helena," Jack responded, his voice deliberately casual. "Calling to tell me how right I was." A heavy sigh came through the encrypted channel. "We need you, Jack." "No, you don't," he shot back, You need what I know. There's a difference. The silence that followed was loaded with unspoken history. Jack and Helena went back decades. She'd been his mentor, his advocate, until the day she couldn't protect him from military bureaucracy. The Krel'vax won't stop, she said finally. New Beijing was just the beginning. Jack knew this. His models had predicted not just the possibility of such an attack, but its likelihood with mathematical precision. 12 million was a statement. A warning. The Krel'vax were testing humanity's response. And humanity was about to give them a response they would never forget. What do you need? Jack asked, already knowing the answer. Everything, Helena replied. And then some. 17 hours after his conversation with Helena, Jack found himself in the most secure briefing room on Europa Station. The word secure here meant multiple layers of quantum encryption, electromagnetic shielding, and a recruitment list that read like a who's who of humanity's most unexpected problem solvers. I'm not sure this is a team, Jack muttered, surveying the collection of individuals before him. This looks more like a support group for professional disaster magnets. First up was Dr. Kira Nakamura, quantum physicist, former corporate saboteur, and the only person Jack knew who could hack a military-grade computer system while solving a complex mathematical proof in her head. Her current attire, a bright yellow radiation-resistant jumpsuit with patches from at least 3 different research institutions, suggested she cared more about functionality than first impressions. I prefer the term creative solutions specialist, Kira responded, not even looking up from the holographic schematics she was manipulating with her fingers. Next to her sat Marcus Rodriguez, Helena's nephew, and a certified space marine with more cybernetic augmentations than original biological parts. His left arm was a marvel of engineering that looked like it could punch through battleship hull plating without breaking a sweat. My aunt said you're the best tactical mind she's ever worked with, Marcus said, his voice a low mechanical rumble that seemed to vibrate the room. I'm reserving judgment. The fourth member of their ragtag team was possibly the most unexpected. Zara Okoye, a former environmental terraform engineer who'd spent the last decade designing survival systems for the most hostile planetary environments humanity had ever encountered. Her specialty was turning seemingly uninhabitable landscapes into livable spaces, a skill that translated surprisingly well to military strategy. The Krel'vax think like systematic colonizers, Zara explained, pulling up holographic terrain maps. They don't improvise. They execute predetermined protocols. That means they're predictable. Jack raised an eyebrow. Predictable how? It's like a computer algorithm, she responded. Beautiful in its logic, devastating in its execution, and fundamentally breakable if you understand the underlying system. Helena's holographic projection flickered into existence at the head of the table. Even as a 2-dimensional image, she managed to look simultaneously exhausted and furious, a look Jack recognized from decades of military service. Our initial intelligence suggests the Krel'vax have been systematically targeting human colonies with specific characteristics, she began. Colonies with advanced terraforming capabilities. Colonies with unique resource potentials. Colonies that represent strategic expansion points. Kira's fingers were already dancing across multiple holographic interfaces. I'm detecting a pattern in their attack vectors. They're not just randomly destroying, they're curating. Curating, Marcus asked, his cybernetic eyes zooming and focusing on the data streams. Like a collector, Jack realized. They're selecting specific colonies, specific populations. This isn't just an invasion, it's a systematic assessment. The room fell silent. The implications were chilling. The Krel'vax weren't just destroying human settlements, they were studying them, learning from them, preparing for something much larger. We have approximately 3 weeks, Helena said, her voice cutting through the tension, to develop a counter-strategy that the Krel'vax won't see coming. Jack looked around the room. A quantum physicist, a cyborg marine, a terraform engineer, and him a retired tactical analyst who'd been laughed out of military command. Well, he said, a dangerous smile spreading across his face, this should be interesting. The thing about military planning is that it looks beautiful on holographic displays, neat lines, precise calculations, perfectly choreographed strategies that make complete sense until the first shot is fired. And then, chaos. Their first engagement with the Krel'vax happened near the Proxima Centauri mining colonies, a series of artificial habitats that processed rare metallic compounds essential for advanced spacecraft construction. Jack's team had been monitoring Krel'vax movement patterns, waiting for the perfect moment to test their theories. "They're coming in from the Gamma Quadrant," Kira announced, her fingers dancing across multiple holographic interfaces. "Quantum signature matches our previous reconnaissance. 3 ships. Biomechanical configuration that suggests adaptive defense systems." Marcus was already suited up in his combat exo armor, a marvel of human engineering that looked like what would happen if you crossed a tank with a Swiss Army knife. Adaptive defense systems. Great. Means standard weapons will be about as effective as throwing marshmallows. Zara's terraform expertise came into play first. She'd spent the previous week reconfiguring the entire Proxima Centauri mining complex into what looked like a perfectly ordinary industrial zone. But nothing was ordinary about their preparations. Decoy systems are in place, she confirmed. Thermal signatures, electromagnetic emissions, everything says this is just another boring mining operation. Jack watched the incoming Krel'vax ships on the tactical display. They moved with a horrifying precision, like mathematical equations given form and purpose. No wasted energy. No unnecessary movements. Pure, calculated destruction. "They're scanning," Kira muttered. "Looking for something." The first plasma bolt struck exactly where they expected, a seemingly vulnerable section of the habitat's outer shell. But instead of breaching, the plasma dispersed in a spectacular, but ultimately harmless light show. "Now," Jack said simply. What happened next was not a battle. It was a demonstration. Marcus's cybernetic systems interfaced with hidden infrastructure Zara had meticulously designed. Entire sections of the mining complex transformed. Harmless maintenance tunnels became kill zones. Industrial processing units became electromagnetic pulse generators. What looked like ordinary cargo containers revealed themselves as mobile defensive platforms. The Krel'vax ships, so confident in their superiority, suddenly found themselves in a labyrinth that was actively fighting back. "They're used to linear combat systems," Zara explained, her voice calm and clinical. "Predictable responses. We're giving them something completely unexpected." Kira had been working her own magic. The quantum physicist had designed a communication disruption system that didn't just block Krel'vax signals, it fed them deliberately misleading information. Fake distress signals. Phantom energy signatures. Digital mirages that made the mining complex look like 10 different locations simultaneously. "Confusion is a weapon," Jack muttered, watching the tactical display, "and we're very, very good at causing confusion." One Krel'vax ship took significant damage from what appeared to be a simple coolant system overload. Another found its weapons systems redirected by a series of quantum entanglement tricks that would make most physicists weep with joy. The entire engagement lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, 2 Krel'vax ships retreated. One was nothing more than floating debris. "First contact," Marcus said. A hint of satisfaction in his mechanical voice. "Went better than expected." Jack knew better. This wasn't a victory. This was a message. Humanity was not going to be an easy target. 72 hours after their successful defense of the Proxima Centauri colonies, the team gathered in a makeshift war room that looked more like a cross between a mad scientist's laboratory and a teenager's cluttered bedroom. Kira had been awake for what seemed like days, surrounded by holographic displays that shifted and pulsed with incomprehensible data streams. Her hair was a wild mess, caffeine stains decorated her jumpsuit, and her eyes burned with the kind of intense focus typically reserved for religious zealots and quantum physicists. "It's not just a communication system," she announced, her words tumbling out faster than most humans could process. "It's a collective consciousness. The Krel'vax don't just communicate. They're literally one integrated neural network." Jack leaned forward. "Explain that in words that don't require a PhD to understand." Zara translated, her environmental engineering background giving her a knack for breaking down complex systems. "Imagine if every ship, every soldier, every piece of their technology was essentially one massive, living computer. They don't just share information. They are the information." Marcus's cybernetic eyes zoomed in on the holographic representation, mechanical components whirring softly. "Which means a critical vulnerability exists. If we can introduce a fundamental disruption to their network, we could potentially paralyze their entire operational capacity," Jack finished. The implications were staggering. The Krel'vax weren't just technologically advanced. They were a singular, unified intelligence that treated individual ships and soldiers like neurons in a massive brain. Kira pulled up a series of quantum entanglement diagrams that looked like abstract art designed by a mathematician having a particularly intense fever dream. Their quantum communication network has a fundamental structural weakness. It relies on a continuous information exchange that assumes perfect, uninterrupted transmission. So we interrupt that transmission, Marcus said, a dangerous edge to his mechanical voice. But Jack was thinking several steps ahead. Not just interrupt. We need to introduce something that fundamentally breaks their understanding of information exchange. Zara's eyes lit up. Entropy, she said. Controlled, weaponized entropy. What followed was a planning session that would have made conventional military strategists weep. They weren't just planning an attack, they were designing a virus. Not a digital virus, but an informational one, a concept that would shatter the Krel'vax's entire operational paradigm. We're going to teach them chaos, Jack said, a smile spreading across his face that was equal parts scientific fascination and pure, vengeful joy. Their weapon wouldn't be a bomb. It wouldn't be a missile or a plasma cannon. It would be pure, mathematically precise disruption, a signal designed to introduce fundamental uncertainty into a system that had never conceived of unpredictability. The Krel'vax believed in perfect information, absolute control, systematic elimination. Humanity was about to show them the beautiful, terrifying art of controlled randomness, and they were going to enjoy every single moment of it. The final assault wasn't going to be a traditional battle. Traditional battles were for predictable enemies. The Krel'vax were about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology, it was imagination. Their target was the Krel'vax Central Command Cluster, a massive quantum network hub located in the Carina Nebula. Intelligence suggested it was the primary coordination point for their entire invasion strategy. Attacking it directly would be suicide. Which is exactly why Jack's plan was brilliant in its almost criminal complexity. We're not going to destroy their network, Jack explained to the team during their final briefing. We're going to fundamentally break how it understands itself. Kira's quantum disruption algorithm was a masterpiece of mathematical terrorism, designed to introduce controlled chaos into a system that believed chaos was impossible. Marcus's cybernetic systems would serve as the delivery mechanism, a Trojan horse wrapped in pure computational potential. Zara had spent weeks redesigning their assault vessel. What looked like a standard reconnaissance ship was actually a mobile quantum destabilization platform. Every system had been modified, every component carefully calibrated to deliver their unique payload. The approach to the Krel'vax command cluster was almost anticlimactic. No massive fleet. No dramatic space battles. Just one seemingly insignificant ship drifting through the electromagnetic soup of the Carina Nebula. Quantum signature masking is at 99.7% efficiency, Kira reported, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. They won't see us coming until it's too late. Marcus's combat systems were fully integrated with the ship's quantum disruption matrix. His cybernetic enhancements allowed him to process computational sequences faster than any standard AI. Targeting systems are locked. Waiting on your mark. The Krel'vax command cluster was a marvel of technological integration. Massive quantum communication nodes stretched across multiple astronomical units, creating a network so complex it bordered on being a living entity. Billions of information streams pulsed simultaneously, each transmission a perfect, mathematically precise communication. Perfection was about to meet its worst nightmare. Initiating first-stage quantum cascade, Kira announced. What happened next was less an attack and more a philosophical assault on the very concept of predictability. The quantum disruption algorithm didn't just introduce random data, it introduced contextually meaningful randomness. Information that was simultaneously true and false. Computational states that existed in multiple potential configurations simultaneously. Imagine telling a computer that 2 could equal 4, 5, 3 and potato all at the same time, and have mathematical proofs to support each conclusion. The Krel'vax network began to fracture. Communication nodes started experiencing quantum decoherence. Entire sections of their network began to report conflicting information. A defensive system would receive orders to attack, while simultaneously receiving orders to retreat. The navigation systems would plot courses that existed in multiple spatial configurations. Their collective consciousness is experiencing what humans would call an existential crisis, Zara observed, her voice a mix of scientific fascination and dark humor. Jack watched the tactical display. What looked like a simple series of data fluctuations was actually the systematic destruction of the most advanced technological network humanity had ever encountered. The Krel'vax didn't just lose communication. They lost their fundamental understanding of communication itself. 3 hours into the assault, their entire invasion strategy collapsed. Ships began firing on each other. Defensive systems turned against their own infrastructure. The perfect, mathematically precise machine began to consume itself in an orgy of computational confusion. "We're not just beating them," Jack said, a rare moment of pure, unfiltered emotion breaking through his typically sardonic exterior. "We're teaching them the most important lesson in the universe. Adaptation isn't about perfection. It's about handling imperfection." When the quantum dust settled, the Krel'vax invasion was over. Not with a massive space battle. Not with overwhelming firepower. But with a virus of pure, beautiful uncertainty. Helena Rodriguez's holographic transmission came through moments later. Her smile was something Jack hadn't seen in years, pure, unrestrained triumph. "Welcome back to active duty, Reiker," she said. Jack just laughed. Humanity had just rewritten the rules of galactic conflict, and they were just getting started.